Mayor Lindsay, you've said that you are not a candidate for the presidency. Some of your staff members seem to think that you're getting closer to it. When will you have to make a hard and fast decision?
Well, I'm not a candidate, and I have no plan to become a candidate. That could change. But I don't know when such time would come that I'd have to totally rule myself out or declare in. It's impossible for me to know at this time. I think the only thing I can do is to do what I must do, which is to speak what's on my mind and to try and be as effective as I can to influence the politics of 1972.
From CBS New York, Face the Nation, a spontaneous and unrehearsed news interview with New York City's Mayor John Lindsay, who recently switched from the Republican to the Democratic Party. Mayor Lindsay will be questioned by CBS News correspondent Morton Dean, R.W. Apple Jr., national political correspondent of the New York Times, and CBS News correspondent George Herman. We shall continue the interview with Mayor Lindsay in a moment.
Tonight, discover an exciting new world of television on another channel, your public TV station. Tonight, William F. Buckley puts a top newsmaker on the firing line, one of the most provocative shows in television. Then enjoy Masterpiece Theater, the widely acclaimed series of international television dramas. Tonight on your local public TV channel.
In Mexico, the possession of drugs can get you a 2 to 9 year sentence. In the United Kingdom, 5 to 7 years. In Turkey, up to life for selling drugs. If you have a son or daughter going overseas, they don't need another lecture on drugs. They need facts now, because their drug laws are a whole lot tougher than ours.
Mayor Lindsay, if and when the time ever comes that you feel that you have to take your actions in favor of the things that you believe in from the realm of speaking into the realm of acting, of running for a political office, will you not have to run on your record as mayor of New York, and is that a record on which you can safely run for the presidency?
Well, if I were a candidate, and I'm not now a candidate, and as I said, I don't know if I ever would become one, I think I'd speak with great pride about my city of New York, and I would speak also about the progress that we've made in this great city in the last 6 years. Our air is cleaner than it was. We have open enrollment in our city university with 200,000 kids now in it and a new class of 41,000. Our police department, we think, has been totally reorganized to be the most scientific and best equipped and most productive and efficient professional department in the country. We're proud of the fact that we're building 25% of all the office space in the country right here in New York, and we have a lot of problems, a great many of them. And although we're first in problems, we like to think that we're first in solutions.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to come back to your answer to the first question, if I might. You say you're not now a candidate and you don't have any present intention of becoming a candidate. To those of us who travel around the country, that sounds rather strange. Let me just cite a couple of things, for example. 2 of your chief political operatives had a secret meeting in Nassau about 3 weeks ago with a professional campaign manager in Florida. You went to California and you consulted with all of the people you would consult with if you were going to run in the California primary. You went to New Hampshire for a wedding of a member of your staff and you met with political leaders there. Is all of this related to your performance as mayor of the city of New York?
Well, I was in New Hampshire. A bachelor member of my staff had fallen in love with a New Hampshire girl, and I went to the wedding, and I now have bachelor members of my staff falling in love with girls in Oregon, California, Wisconsin, and so on. No, I don't. There's some of the meetings that you referred to I have no knowledge of. I do have knowledge of some others, and they're designed to try to build a coalition for change in 1972. I'm interested in political action. I'm not interested in an academic exercise. I'm interested in that kind of mobilization of forces that will change the government around in Washington in 1972 and make a lot of other changes, too, politically. You sit in my chair for 5.5 years, and political action becomes important because without it, we're all going down the drain.
Mayor Lindsay, the other day, George Meany of the AFL-CIO was asked what he would do if John Lindsay were the Democratic nominee for president, and he answered rather sharply, "I'd vote for Nixon." Isn't it inconceivable that the Democrats would nominate any man who had not been embraced by big labor, embraced by a man of the stature of George Meany?
Mort, I'm not a candidate, and therefore I don't really think I have to comment on that. Mr. Meany is certainly entitled to his opinion.
But doesn't the question stand alone? Wouldn't the Democratic nominee have to have the support of people such as Mr. Meany?
I think and hope that the Democratic ticket will have a broad base of support of a lot of people. I think he needs the obvious disaffected constituency in the country, which is the young, the poor, the black, the Chicano, the Puerto Rican. But he also needs the blue-collar worker. He needs a big chunk of that now worried group across the country that is middle-class status and troubled about the economy, about joblessness, and about the war, and looking for solutions. So I think it's got to be a very broad grouping, and I think it's impossible to exclude anybody or to say that it all depends on any one group.
Are you saying that the support of the leaders of the major labor movements is no longer as important as it once was?
No, I'm not saying that. I think that in many ways that the problems that the blue-collar worker is facing now, as he seems and feels squeezed from every side, are more aggravated than they have been in a decade. And a Democratic ticket is going to have to pay attention to him and worry about him, and should, because his children aren't going to college today. He can't afford it. Inflation has squeezed him out of the marketplace, and he's a very troubled man. I also think that the blue-collar worker and the youth of the country and the blacks have to start bridging some gaps that are there, and if they don't do it, why, we're not going to be able to repair some of the polarization that exists in the country now.
Isn't it among the blue-collar workers that you have precisely had your greatest difficulties in running for office in New York?
Well, we've had pluses and minuses politically. I think that we've made some very important gains in my city when it comes to municipal labor and their gains. That must have been recognized when I ran for re-election in 1969, because I had very big groups that supported my candidacy. Sanitation workers were in my support, the transit workers, the hospital workers, and social workers, and these areas I had very big support.
Could you be re-elected mayor again, do you think?
I don't know the answer to that. I didn't think there was a chance I could be re-elected in 1969. I ran hard, and by a combination of things and possibly some luck and some miracles, I won re-election.
Mr. Mayor, I don't want to probe too deeply into the amorous relationships of your staff, but I would like to come back to this meeting that took place, I believe, over the Labor Day weekend, when two of the senior members of your staff, Mr. Aurelio and Mr. Davidoff, called over to Nassau, one of the leading campaign operators in Florida, to have a discussion with him about the prospects of his handling a Lindsay operation in Florida. Now, was this unauthorized, or is this a figment of people's imaginations, or what?
No, Johnny, that's when I said a moment ago that there's some of the meetings you referred to, if they occurred, that I know nothing about. That's one that I know nothing about. This is the first I've heard. I certainly, I'm not going to say it didn't happen. It may well have. And I think that's okay. I think that it may be entirely the wrong thing for me at some point to declare as a candidate. It could be non-effective. And I don't wish to be in that position. I don't think my city ought to be in that position. I think that political action is very necessary for the good of 8 million New Yorkers that I'm charged to lead. I think that's true of every other major city in the country. But and if I thought that by declaring and running that I'd further the urban cause and the changes that I think we have to have in 1972, I'd do it in a minute. But it may be absolutely clear after probing and testing by people like Dick Aurelio and others that that's the wrong course. And if that appears to be the wrong course, I'm not going to do it. But I will be working with others to bring about the strongest possible and the best ticket in 1972 in the Democratic Party in order to bring around some changes.
If I may follow up just briefly on that. I believe about 4 days ago, a large group of students wrote a letter to you, I believe at the behest of Mr. McGovern. Mr. McGovern's campaign people are very nervous about the possibility of a Lindsay candidacy for the obvious reason that you'd appeal to the same kinds of electorates, same portions of the electorate. The kids said to you, don't run, stay out, endorse McGovern. Did you see the letter, and do you have any reaction to it?
Yes, I met, incidentally, when I was in California recently, I met with a group of young people, and two of them there were two of the originators of that letter. Mm-hmm. And they asked me about it point blank, and I told them exactly what I thought about it. I said that I'd had enough of consensus politics. I don't think it works. I think consensus politics tends to obscure real issues and put things under the rug. I didn't leave the Republican Party and join the Democratic Party in order to join a closed club. I don't believe that politicians, when there are big stakes and big issues in the country, ought to be engaging in group therapy. I think it's time to draw the line. I think it's time for some hard issues to be spelt out, and I think that case has to be made. I've never seen a case yet that the public interest was served by a closed house.
And Mr. McGovern isn't spelling these issues out?
In fact, I had enough. In fact, I spent 7 years in the House of Representatives, and I think that place is too much of a club and too much of a closed house, and they pay too much of attention trying to soften each other's personal problems and personal political problems rather than going to the public. I think McGovern is a very attractive candidate.
Could you
and a first-class senator.
Could you enthusiastically support any of the current crop of name possibilities for the Democratic nomination? Muskie, McGovern, By, Humphrey, Jackson, Harris?
Let's put it this way, Mort, that I hope very much to be able to support enthusiastically the Democratic ticket. And I think you've got a lot of attractive candidates who are running. Now, I'm not going to engage in a name game at this time because I really think that tends to really to obscure the real issues. And it tends to focus on personalities and people rather than on the things that's troubling the country.
Let me get you back to the John Lindsay issue then, if you like. I'm curious about some of the impressions that people have gotten. I notice that Mr. Udall is of the impression that you agree with him that this is not your time to run for the presidency, and that former Governor Pat Brown of California says he has no doubt whatsoever that you are now running for the presidency. How did these two distinguished gentlemen get two such opposite ideas? Are you all things to all people?
No, I don't know how they. I think that my statements have been consistent because they're exactly what I believe, which is that I don't know whether it would be right for me to become a candidate in 1972. I don't know whether it would be politically viable, and I don't know whether I'd be the right person to pull together that kind of broad-scale coalition that I think is going to be needed to begin the cementing process and to change around the government the way I think it ought to be changed in 1972. And I've tried to make that clear.
You've done some traveling trying to make this clear. Do you think you're making any progress in pulling together such a coalition or in finding out whether you are, in fact, the person?
No, not yet. I don't. I really don't think that the kind of broad coalition that I think is needed has yet gelled. And I think that it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be easy to bring around a political change in 1972. It's going to be difficult. One reason, perhaps, is that politicians don't seem to be believable. People have been turned off by national politics of the last 10 years. And you can't blame them when you look at the record, when you look at the rate of unemployment, when you look at the war in Vietnam, when you look at the fact that 3 political leaders have been assassinated, and when you look at the condition of our cities.
Well, that presumably includes New York. And we come back to the question.
They're all in trouble.
They're all in trouble, yep. And we come back to the question that you have persistently argued that you need more money, presumably from the federal government, and that the federal government from time to time has said, why, look, here's some money in your budget that you didn't know about that because of inefficient administration has been languishing here, not spent.
Well, I'm prepared to argue that point with you, and I don't accept that. I think, sure, we've no doubt about it that to get as productive and as effective and as efficient as you need to collect the best heads in the country to do it. I think we have it in New York. I believe that my cabinet is the best collection of administrators and managers of any government in the country. I think that includes every state. And we believe that we're making progress. Now, we're dealing with massively big things. And every now and then something goes wrong. And when it does, we're free to admit it, and we repair it, and we get on with it. And I think that for the most part, as time and history wears on, that the record will show that.
Well, let me ask you about a detailer. You know, I'm not as expert as Mort is on it, but for example, I noticed in one article that you had made a big pitch on getting more blacks into the city police as a laudable effort, but that the number of blacks had increased in the New York City Police from only, I think it's 3.5% to something like 7%. Is that enough of an effort? Does that satisfy you? And
no, it does not satisfy me. I find it very frustrating, because you're talking about the whole apparatus of civil service. You're talking about very rigid laws and very powerful unions, and we're making big dents, but they're not enough. Now, just recently, we have released a program under which we use Model Cities money, which is federal money, to build police aids and fire aids in Model Cities communities. These are the 3 major ghetto areas of New York City. In uniform, reporting to the regular police command, and using federal money to do it. These would be, for the most part, or 99% non-white. We're in the courts about it. The unions have brought suit, and we're struggling in the courts, but we think we're going to win it, and we keep that kind of effort going forward that makes gains. Sometimes they're too small, but they're gains.
Mr. Lindsay, since you became mayor, state aid to the city has gone from less than something like $900 million to more than $2 billion. Federal aid has increased. And at the same time, the city budget has almost doubled to over $8.5 billion. With this in mind, many of your critics, and indeed some of your own people in City Hall, say that the voters may find it difficult to accept your contention that so many of the city's woes are born of state and national indifference to the problems of New York.
Well, look where increased revenues have gone. They've gone in 4,000 more men in our police department, plus increased salaries and wages for all of them and for all municipal employees. The wages and salaries go up in our city about the same as all other cities, approximately 14 or 15% each year, with a normal increase in your revenue side of about 5%. So we have built-in deficits. It's gone into 1,000 more nurses in our hospitals. It's gone into a new hospital corporation that we've built up and assigned our 18 municipal hospitals in, that have new beds, new operating rooms, new x-ray machinery, more technical assistance, and all the rest. It's gone into beefed up sanitation and more men in sanitation efforts. And I may say that on top of all of this, that probably more than any other community in the nation, the word productivity has been on the front burner of the stove. It's been the key item on collective bargaining. And it's been, in my own judgment, it's been the most important management detail that we've done in the last couple of years, all the way from parks maintenance to beach cleanup to the quality of the air, and a half a dozen other nuts and bolts issues in the city.
But haven't you had a great deal of difficulty in fulfilling some of the key promises of at least the first campaign and some of the promises of the '69 campaign, especially in the building of low-cost housing? Almost everyone in the city cites a major failure in that category.
Let me interrupt right there, Mort. Last year, we broke all records in the history of the city of New York with one exception, in the production of tax-supported housing in the city. That's low and middle-income housing together. And we think that next year and the year after, assuming market conditions hold, cost limitations don't go skyrocketing up, and inflation doesn't kill us, and the availability of the federal funds that you have to build any housing today, that will do even better. Now, that's not to say that it's enough. It's not enough, because our housing needs outstrip all kinds of gains that we make. Same is true in the area of rehabilitation. We've made gains in rehabilitation, but not enough gains. So that I think it's fair comment to say that New York City's housing needs are not being met. It's true they're not, even though with tax-supported housing, we've been able to have some breakthroughs.
Mr. Mayor, in your article in the current issue of Foreign Affairs, You say that hard choices will flow from the recognition of the identity of domestic and foreign policy. You're not very specific about what those hard choices will be. I wondered if I could ask you, aside from cutting the defense budget, what areas of government would you penalize in order to provide more money for that which you want to do with federal revenues?
Well, I'm not sure I understand your word penalize. I do think...
What would you cut?
I think that first of all, that war in Vietnam has got to be ended. We should have been out of it long ago, and there's absolutely no excuse from the point of view of morality or strategy or defense or safety or security or international relations to be continuing on in Vietnam supporting the Thieu government and still killing. Secondly, to me, it's absolutely clear that of a $230 billion budget, that portions of it ought to be redirected towards domestic needs. You know, when they poured in $250 million into Lockheed, all the government was doing was supporting an induced corporation, perpetuating something that, like the Vietnam War, is archaic, outmoded, obsolete. The same kind of monies could be used to induce private sector efforts in solid waste disposal, pure air, cleaning up the waters, compaction, decent taxi cabs for cities, mass transit, all these in health care. You can go on, the kind of things that can be done out of the existing budget. And
where are the hard choices, then?
Without any reduction in the safety or security of this country.
Where are the hard choices you were talking about in the article? That's your phrase. Hard choices will have to be made.
Well, hard choices are, again, is an immediate withdrawal from Vietnam. I'd make that number one. I'd make number two the redirection of portions of this massive budget that the American economy supports towards the domestic needs of this country that are
just
unmet.
the defense budget that you're trying? It's just the defense budget that you're trying to redirect, or what else?
There may be. That is the biggest chunk of all in the budget. That's between $80 and $90 billion, and you can, as I testified before the Congress not too long ago, you could take $10 billion of that right now and redirect it towards domestic needs without shaking anything. Without any lessening in any area of vital support or vital need for the security of this country. I believe that with a solid program and a thoughtful, longer range approach, that you can do much more than that. And I believe also that there's segments of the economy that you can shift. We're pouring billions of dollars in the support of highways, and not a penny into the operations of mass transit. We're pouring, again, billions of dollars into aspects of housing that has no impact on the central city. Isn't it time for some shift in that? What I'm saying is that the biggest budget that the country has ever had has some flexibility in it. And the flexibility is not there. You can go to Congress and ask for the kind of changes to do something for suburban and urban America that's not being done now.
Let me apply a little lateral shift. Yeah. We only have about 3 minutes left. You served in the House with Congressman Poff of Virginia. What do you think of him as a possible Supreme Court justice?
Well, again, I don't think it's useful to get into speculation and comment on persons who have not been nominated. No one has been nominated by the President to the Senate for the Supreme Court.
Then let me draw you.
At this time, I can tell you what I would hope to see emerge ultimately by way of an appointment to the court. The kind of person. I think that what is needed is compassion, deep knowledge of the divisions within the country, a understandable and obviously a record of knowledge in the rule of law, a good professional. Most importantly, I think with the change in the court, that a lot of people, particularly minorities, are getting worried and frightened and bothered that there's no understanding on the court of their real problems, and I think that has to be looked at.
We only have 2 minutes left, but let me ask you how these criteria that you have outlined would apply to Mr. Poff if I were to nominate him as a speculator.
Yeah, but that's a hypothetical. If Congressman Poff is nominated by the President, if I'm asked, I'll certainly have a comment at that time.
You may notice that the President said in his speech before the Economics Club of Detroit that he would like to have 2 more justices of the stripe of Chief Justice Berger and Mr. Justice Blackmun. What do you think of that?
Well, once again, I think what I would hope to see on the court would be men or women of who have a really keen awareness of some of the real deep-seated sores and wounds and agonies in America.
Just a quick one, Mr. Mayor. There's been some talk about a fourth party this year, a liberal fourth party. As a political observer, what do you think the chances of that are if, say, Mr. Jackson, or leave Mr. Jackson out of it, if somebody is nominated by the Democrats that the left doesn't like?
I don't know the chances of that. I don't think fourth parties are effective. I became a Democrat out of frustration with the Republican Party, out of a wish to see something done immediately about the condition of the country, and because I think the Democratic Party represents the best hope, indeed the only real hope, for a realistic change in 1972. I don't think that a fourth party would do that.
The broadcast has almost ended without a question about your possible interest in the vice presidency.
Well, I'm supposed to have the second toughest job in the country. Why should I be interested in the third?
Thank you very much, Mayor Lindsay, for being with us today on Face the Nation.
For 25 years, the world's most needed gift, the care package. May 11, 1946, the first of 100 million care packages lands in France. Today, when you say, let's send a care package, people the world over know what you mean. And today, in 35 countries around the world, care helps millions of needy people with schools that end illiteracy, water systems that bring pure water to entire villages, flood-proof homes that save countless lives, roads that bring civilization a bit closer, nutrition centers giving people the strength to become self-reliant. Care helps to make the world a better place.
Today on Face the Nation, Mayor John Lindsay of New York City was interviewed by CBS News correspondent Morton Dean. R.W. Apple, Jr., national political correspondent of the New York Times, and CBS News correspondent George Herman. Next week, another prominent figure in the news will face the nation. The top professional football teams take to the field as CBS Sports begins serving up an action-packed series of NFL doubleheaders beginning this afternoon. Face the Nation was recorded Friday in New York City.